Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things, and welcome to another video, and welcome to another Jane Austen July video, and a slightly different one at that. Today, I'm bringing you a collaborative video made with several other wonderful booktubers, all of whose channels will be linked down below. Basically, I asked several booktubers who love Jane Austen what their favourite Jane Austen book was, and this was the result.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth at A Literary Princess. So, what is my favorite Jane Austen book? That has to go to Persuasion, which is her final finished novel. I love this book because I think, one, it is the most romantic of any of Jane Austen's novels. Captain Wentworth writes this beautiful letter to Anne, and it is the most romantic thing I have ever read in my life. I actually had it read at my wedding. But I also love that this is the most mature of Jane Austen's books. It's a quieter book. It's more somber. It's not as funny as some of her earlier ones, although there's plenty of humor in here. But I just like how quiet, a little bit melancholy at the beginning it is, but then builds to this gorgeous, triumphant love story.
Hey folks, my name's Abby and my channel is Abby of Pellinor. I read primarily fantasy books, but I love delving into a variety of genres, and that includes classics. I've read all of Jane Austen's novels, including Lazy Susan as well, and I have to say that my favourite is Sense and Sensibility. Don't get me wrong, I love Pride and Prejudice, but the best relationship development in here between the two sisters is absolutely fantastic, and I love the mother figure, even if 2 out of the 3 love interests in this book is absolute trash. Regardless, I really enjoy Sense and Sensibility. It is very similar to Pride and Prejudice, but also being so incredibly different. Let me know if you've read that one.
Hi, my name is Anna Marie and my booktube username is Actual Spinster. I think my favourite Jane Austen novel has to be Northanger Abbey, which I realise is somewhat of an underdog in discussions about favourite novels, but I really love it for how it's like really interested in what being a reader like can do to you, and how it can like stimulate your imagination to the extent that you change and reinterpret the life that is around you. But I also like how it has this like underlying commitment to the fact that some of those like intuitive and imaginative leaps are like ultimately true, or they have like a grain of truth in them and they shouldn't be completely ignored. I feel like it works on multiple levels as a novel that like is a spoof of like a gothic novel, but at the same time takes seriously like the girl protagonist's perspective and experience of life. And I think, it also has all of the things that we love in Jane Austen: interesting characters, relationships, dialogue. So yeah, I would really, recommend Northanger Abbey.
Hi, I'm Marissa from Blatantly Bookish. My favorite Austen novel would have to be Pride and Prejudice. But since I think a lot of people will be ranting and raving about Pride and Prejudice today, I wanted to put a good word in for my second favorite Austen novel, which is Emma. Emma is such a funny and complex novel. I think it has some of Austen's best writing. It is so interesting narratively. I love how it takes place entirely in Highbury. It really allows the reader to focus on the nuances between the characters, on their dialogue, on their interactions, and really just focus on what Austen does best in her writing. I think the characters are absolutely hilarious. Emma is amazing to read about. She is so funny in her delusions and in her obliviousness to those around her. The book just has so many different layers and such richness to it. It never disappoints.
Hello, I'm Brian from the channel Bookish, and my favorite Jane Austen novel is Persuasion. I love the romance between Anne Elliot and Captain Wentworth, and the famous letter that appears near the end of the novel. But the thing I think I like most about the novel are the characters of Anne Elliot and Captain Wentworth. That Anne Elliot is a mature character who has made mistakes and has learned from those, and is incredibly capable and kind and really wonderful, mature person. who settles finally on the love of her life. And that person is, I think, an unusual character to a certain extent in Jane Austen, because Captain Wentworth is not a titled nobleman. He isn't incredibly rich, and the money he's made for himself as a ship's captain. I think there's a certain kind of reality or realism in Persuasion that to a certain extent may be absent from some of the other Jane Austen novels.
Right, so hello, I'm Katie from the channel Books and Things, which presumably you know if you are here watching this video. And to be fully honest with you, my favourite novel by Jane Austen, one of my favourite books of all time, is Pride and Prejudice. But as I was editing this video, I realised that my second favourite Jane Austen novel had not been mentioned by anyone. So I thought that instead of telling you about how funny and romantic and clever and entertaining Pride and Prejudice is, I would instead tell you about how subtle and complicated and wonderful Mansfield Park is. I think it's a wonderful, complex, powerful coming-of-age story following a character, Fanny Price, who is much quieter and more introverted than, you know, someone like Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice, but who has a real sort of strong inner strength. And I feel like the social critique within Mansfield Park and the way it looks at the theme of home and family and oppression, like there's so much in this book that I love. I think it's so rich and so worth your time. So although it is my second favourite novel by Jane Austen, not my favourite, I still did want to put in a good word for Mansfield Park.
Hello, this is Art from the Bookshelf Odyssey, and on my channel I love to read classics and mysteries and science fiction and really anything that's good. And somehow I'm supposed to talk in under a minute about my favorite Jane Austen book, Emma. I'm not sure how I'm going to accomplish that because this book is near perfection in my mind. The book is funny, it's witty, it's romantic. I love the friends to lovers trope that Austen uses. And there's so many silly characters in this book, and yet there are people that I know in real life who behave in the way that they do. I especially love Mr. Knightley and his kindness that he shows not just to Emma, his friend, but to those around him. As Emma herself would say, no one has gentlemen so plainly written across them as Mr. Knightley. So read Emma, love it. You will be charmed and delighted by her, I have no doubt.
Hey, this is Cams from Cams Campbell Reads. Thanks for having me on, Katie, to talk about my favourite Jane Austen novel, which is Emma. Probably because it was the first one I read, and I read it when I was in Ukraine during a year abroad, living in Odessa, and I borrowed a lot of books from the British Council Library that year, and this one, it just cheered me up, you know. It was a difficult year. It was in the mid-90s. Ukraine was wild. Lots of stuff happening. And just to read a quintessentially English novel with lots of humour in it and interesting characters, and my first Jane Austen novel, it just brings back such great memories for me. So that's why Emma is my favourite.
My favourite Jane Austen tends to be the Jane Austen I'm currently reading, but the one I pick up when I want a comfort read is Persuasion.
What I love about Persuasion is
that you have what Jane Austen does so well, which is where you have all of the cast of characters and the way they interact with each other, and how Jane uses that to be kind of poking fun at society a little bit. I really enjoy how snobbery and class is explored in this book, and I really love the character of Mary, not because I'd like to meet her, but because she's just a fascinatingly awful, annoying character. She's a hypochondriac, she is hypocritical, and she's so self-centered, but wouldn't believe she is actually self-centered. But every time she opens her mouth, everything revolves in how it reverts back to her. And I just find it absolutely hilarious to read about. And Anne, by comparison, you can just see how intelligent, graceful, and practical that she is in those moments. But what I also love about, she doesn't compromise who she is. Even though we're sold as this character who has been persuaded against marrying someone she was in love with, she is very principled and she has strong opinions. And when it matters, she will speak up against things that she doesn't agree with. And I absolutely love that. I also really enjoy the romance in this book, and that is why it is one of my favourite Jane Austens.
Hi, I'm Danny from Danny's Book World, and my favourite Jane Austen book has got to be Emma, which I'm very happy is the group read this month. I just love the banter that's in Emma. I love the characters, and I particularly love her dad. And in the most recent adaptation, Bill Nye plays her dad, and he gets it spot on. So that is definitely my favourite one. I also love the comedy in it. It's just so funny. And then my second favourite is, of course, Pride and Prejudice, like everyone else. But I still need to read Northanger Abbey and Mansfield Park. I've not read those two, so we'll see if they get overtaken. But I think it would take a lot to beat Emma for me.
Hi everyone, I'm Heather of Fresh Parchment, and I have to say I alternate between two favorites. Pride and Prejudice, of course, is up there. It is light, bright, and sparkling, and just fabulous. But I have to say, more and more, Emma tends to take the top spot for me. I just think it's a bit more multi-dimensional. You can read it over and over again, and there is that first mystery sort of element where you discover all kinds of clues when you go back and read it a second time or a third time that you missed on your first reading. I feel like it's much more intergenerational than a lot of Austen's other novels, so you get to identify with many more characters and many different characters as you age, but it still has that light, bright, sparkling, fun, comedic element to it that Pride and Prejudice also shares.
Hi, my name is Melissa and my channel is Fully Booked, and at the risk of sounding very basic, my favorite Jane Austen novel is Pride and Prejudice, but I think it's a common favorite for a reason. It is just so good. It's got great characters, great plot, great pacing, it's got romance and tension and humor, and despite its age, it feels maybe not quite contemporary, but it does feel very familiar. The characters are so recognizable. I think we all know someone who's a bit of a Mrs. Bennet or a Mr. Darcy or a Mr. Collins, and the social situations feel very familiar as well. Even if you don't know much about the Regency period or its social norms, you can feel the social situations, you can feel the awkward situations, you can tell when someone's made a faux pas, you can recognize a moment of snobbery, and you get completely wrapped up in it. And this timeless quality is just one reason that Pride and Prejudice is my favorite Jane Austen novel.
Hello, I'm Hannah from the channel Hannah's Books. I've loved Jane Austen since I was a girl, back when I preferred Sense and Sensibility to Pride and Prejudice, primarily because it was about sisterhood rather than romance, which did not yet interest me at all. But things did change soon on that front. And when I read Emma for the first time, I had a whole new favorite Austen novel. I love watching Emma grow from someone always sure she's right to a more thoughtful young woman who's empathetic and understanding of her community and ready to create deeper relationships. Of course, watching characters grow and change has become one of the ways we define what makes a novel, and we have Jane Austen, at least partly, to thank for that development. I can't wait to read Emma again as part of this year's Jane Austen July.
Hello everyone, it's Camilla from Hasty Books. I'm really pleased to be participating today with my favorite Jane Austen novel, and it is Persuasion. I love this one because of the main female protagonist. She is older, I think she's one of the oldest one in all of the Jane Austen novels. And also it's her journey to sort of coming into her own, not letting other people dictate what she thinks, especially family in this era that had a lot to say. And yeah, like learning, to stand up for herself. And I really love the romance as well. You know, Wentworth, what a dreamy guy. He's worked his way up and sort of comes back, and they rekindle sort of what they had as love and friendship first. And I think I quite like that. I felt more mature, more kind of quiet and slow at times for me. And that's why it sort of just hit me as my favorite one and a big recommend.
Hi, it's Emily from Novell Novels, and my favourite Jane Austen has to be Pride and Prejudice. I absolutely blew in love the sisters. I love how different they all are. I love our lead character. I think so many of the characters in Pride and Prejudice make me happy. Like some of the side characters I absolutely love as well. I love the family element. I love the fact that there's a bit of cheekiness with Charlotte Lucas. I just absolutely love all of the characters, and I just think the more times I read it, the more I love. I love the fact that the two sisters, the oldest two sisters, get on really well, and then you've got the naughty two younger sisters, and I love the little twists in that. I do love the fact that you've got the middle sister who's a bit on the different side, and I just really enjoy it. I think the writing is amazing. So Pride and Prejudice is by far my favourite Jane Austen. And thank you, Katie, for having me a part of this video. Bye-bye.
Hey there, I'm Olivia Spanner here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and for this Jane Austen July, I wanted to let you know about my favourite Jane Austen book. And I will always stand by the fact that the best Jane Austen book is Sense and Sensibility. I recently reread it and I absolutely loved it. I'm someone who comes from a family of 4 sisters, and so I absolutely love that we get a spotlight on Eleanor and Marianne as a sister duo. I also think they have some very troublesome men in their lives and love interests or potential love interests, and so getting to see them navigate the highs and the lows, being there for each other, learning to open up to each other, learning to forgive each other, and trying to do right by each other again and again. So even though this is a literary fiction book with a lot of romance at its core, the sisterhood and that family bond is what shines the brightest for me and what makes me love it the most. And I will sneakily also recommend a book that is based on Jane Austen, and that is The Other Bennet Sister by Janice Hadlow. If you have not read it and you love Pride and Prejudice, you definitely need to read it. I have not read a book written in Jane Austen style that captures it as wonderfully as that book does, and it follows Mary Bennet, who seems to be the forgotten Bennet sister, and her own journey to finding love, but also to finding more about herself.
My favourite Jane Austen book honestly fluctuates. Hi, for those of you that don't know me, my name's Kirsten, I'm from the channel Read and Nymph, and I love both Emma and Northanger Abbey, but I have to admit, lately Northanger Abbey has been winning for me, especially because this one is a parody of horror classics, and I am in my horror mood at the moment. I am loving it, and Northanger Abbey is just so much fun. It is hilarious. We have a lot of satire about the horror classics like Anne Radcliffe, and I really enjoy it. It is melodramatic, it's over the top, but it is so much fun. Just don't take it seriously, but genuinely the characters in this are so fun to follow, and just see the overactive imagination taking hold and taking something that is actually quite innocent and putting a little bit of a sinister twist to it. It is really quite funny. So yes, please, if you haven't read this one, it's so underrated, you have to.
Hi, Roy here. My channel's called Roy Reads Anything, and favourite Jane Austen novel, not easy, but I'm going to say Emma. One reason is that we did it at school, and studying it at school meant a sort of journey where a room full of teenage boys went from like, what is this? Why do we have to read this? To like, no, Emma, what have you done that for? And, you know, getting into it, and plus we had a field trip to Chawton, that was good. Also, the characters are vivid, it's funny, it's an engaging plot, it's been served well by adaptations too, so also Box Hill, location for a key scene, iconic place in everything from music to motorcycling, so what's not to like? Emma.
How to pick my favourite Jane Austen novel. Is it this one that I've read first and read so often that it's now falling to pieces? Is it this one that I obsessed over as a teenager? Or even this one that's grown more in my estimation than any of the others over repeated readings? No. It's none of those. It's this one, Persuasion. Why? Because of its streak of melancholy and two wonderful, thoughtful, caring, decent main characters who have to make the best of things despite their disappointments in life. And that makes the ending with its second chance at happiness all the more satisfying and glorious and beautiful. So this is my favourite.
Hi, I'm Shelley of the channel Shelley Swearingen. My favorite Jane Austen novel is by far Pride and Prejudice. To no surprise. It's got this enemies to lovers premise, super clever, incredibly sharp, not a word out of place. However, before I realized the brilliance of this novel, I had to fall in love with Jane Austen in some way, and that way was with Persuasion. This is a very mature novel for Austen. The protagonist is quite a bit older than other Austen protagonists, and it's a second chance romance. In this, though, I think the thing that made me fall in love with Austen was there's this moment, and if you've read it, you know, where it is so emotional. And I was surprised that Austen could go there, that she could get me quite choked up while reading this, I don't know, pivotal moment in the book. And so this is the book that made me fall in love with Austen. And then I've gone back around and just absolutely understood the cleverness that is Pride and Prejudice.
My favorite Jane Austen book is Pride and Prejudice. I'm such a rebel, I know. But it's not my fault that this is as close to the perfect novel as a book can get. Elizabeth Bennet is such a memorable protagonist. Her family is hilarious. There's mystery and romance and so much drama. The tension between Lizzie and that disagreeable man, Mr. Darcy, is delicious. The villains are top tier, in particular, of course, Lady Catherine de Bourgh. And the way the storylines all weave and tie together is a masterclass in plotting. But I'll tell you what makes Pride and Prejudice so special, and that's the way we as the reader are thrown right into the middle of it. It doesn't start with a page-long character study like Emma, or, God forbid, a family chronicle like Sense and Sensibility. You open the book and the story is right there, waiting to be told. Netherfield Park is let at last, and you'll never guess who's moving in.
I'm Jack, my channel is Spread Bookjoy, and I've got less than a minute to tell you why Pride and Prejudice is my favourite book, which is quite a task, but I'm going to tell you about it using this edition. And I'm not just going to talk about the fact that it is a perfect novel. It is my favourite of her books for the story, for the characters, for the humour, and all of those reasons. And there is another reason it is my favourite, and that is because this particular edition, this Penguin Popular Classics edition, which was £1, Penguin brought out a series of really cheap editions, the Penguin Popular Classics, to rival the Wordsworth Classics that were doing really well back in the 90s, and I bought this because I'd read Emma at A-level at 17 and really didn't like it, and I thought Austen wasn't for me. I used to buy quite a lot of these popular classics, and I spotted this on the shelf one day and I thought, well, it's only £1 and it is her most famous book, maybe give Austen one more go, and I'm so glad I did. This book has been such a delight to me in itself. And of itself, it has been a comfort blanket. It has been my sort of safe place and the thing that I retreat to when I just need something warm and cozy to read that I love. And beyond that, it opened up this world of Austen to me. So if it wasn't for this £1 edition, a Penguin Popular Classic edition of Pride and Prejudice, I'd have missed out on such immense joy in my life. And so despite the fact that it is also an amazing book, I also love Pride and Prejudice because it was my gateway to Jane Austen. So that is my favourite Jane Austen book.
Hi, my name is Catherine, and my channel is Taking Tea with Catherine, and my favorite Jane Austen novel is Persuasion, mainly for the character of Anne Elliot. I find her to be very well balanced. She is a very reliable person, loyal, patient, all those good qualities, something you might see in an Eleanor Dashwood perhaps, except slightly older, but she also has a romantic sensibility about her. She advises prose reading for certain people who are maybe a little too obsessed with poetry perhaps, but she appreciates poetry herself, and I just like that balance. And I also really love a very well-known letter at the end of the book written by a certain Captain Wentworth. It is memorable and quotable by me many times, and I could read this book over and over again and never tire of it, and always still wonder what's going to happen to Anne at the ending. And so I really love Persuasion, and I hope you do too.
So there we go. I hope you have enjoyed this trip through many booktubers' favourite Jane Austen novels. I found the results very, very interesting. I was expecting Pride and Prejudice to steam into the lead. And I did say to people when I sent out my would you like to take part in this video email, I did say if you're torn between Pride and Prejudice and another book, feel free to choose the other book, because there will be plenty of Pride and Prejudice representation, which there was. But I was surprised, not necessarily by how many people chose Persuasion, but by how many people chose Emma. I was kind of expecting Pride and Prejudice to be number 1 and Persuasion second place, and then the others to kind of have a little bit of a mix. I was kind of prepared for Mansfield Park to not be chosen by anyone, but I wasn't expecting so many people to talk about how much they loved Emma. But that is quite nice. You know, because it is a great book. And, you know, as it's our group read this Jane Austen July, it's quite fun that so many people have spoken about how much they love it. So yeah, that's all for now. Do go and watch all of these booktubers. They're all fantastic. All of their channels will be linked down below. And yeah, let us know in the comments, what is your favourite Jane Austen novel? I would love to know. That's all for now. Thanks very much for watching. I'll be back very soon with another bookish video.